Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. This is episode 327, and we're here, and I am your host, Sean Hayes, here to bring you the latest and greatest gaming news of the past week. So, yeah, boy, it's been a week. um, yeah, I once again, it seemed like there wasn't a whole lot of news to really talk about until like Friday rolled around. Um, but yeah, we've got some good topics this week. Notably, we have some Dungeons and Dragons news. Um, and an update on the Pal World v Nintendo lawsuit. Um, so, but for those who listened to last week's episode, and were tuning in, I ended up placing first in our Lorcana Set Championship tournament. Super stoked about that. I don't know if I will ever repeat it again. But it is my first time coming in top for any sort of TCG tournament. So feel really good about that. And we'll see. Boy, there's been a lot of card reveals for Reign of Jafar, which comes out at the end of the month. And then set rotations happen. So I don't know what's going to happen after that point. So, but yeah, aside from that, just playing World of Warcraft. Although we did test out, my D&D group tested out the sort of 5e, 4e, Pathfinder 2e sort of hack that I put together. We played that last night. It was a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of fun. So, for the dungeon masters out there, I highly recommend Giphy Glyph's Monster Maker if you're trying to make monsters. But just keep in mind that you might have to tweak some of the numbers a little bit for the 2024 edition. So, because it ended up that my players, it was, yeah, like a lot of times they just weren't getting hit at all. So a lot of the damage being dealt was through choices that were given to them instead of like actually just being hit by attacks. But that's okay. We're learning. We're learning and developing. So, and speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, why don't we get into that piece of news for this week's topics? So first up, D&D Beyond released a new Unearthed Arcana. This time focusing on horror subclasses. This playtest is now live. Feedback, I think the feedback opens up next week. Like the forum opens up next week. So features revisions for College of Spirits, which was a bard subclass that was introduced in Strixhaven, and then reprinted in Van Richten's, I believe. Grave Domain Cleric, perennial favorite. Phantom Rogue, Shadow Sorcerer, the ever favorite Hexblade Warlock, and the Undead Warlock. And it also includes two new subclasses, the Reanimator Artificer and Hollow Warden Ranger. So I haven't delved too deeply into this. I have seen some discussion and pointed out some very unpopular opinions regarding Hexblade Warlock. seems like it's because Pact of the Blade now does like most of what the third level or like the base Pact benefits for Hexblade. It's like now rolled into Pact of the Blade. Um, they had to kind of shift the focus from that. So like you no longer get medium armor proficiency for free. Um, I think that's fine. But so now it focuses more on like the hexing part, which I think is okay. You know, people want hex. What people want is they want Hexblade to be their perfect little Gish thing that also functions as like their perfect little level 1 dip for every class that's based on charisma, so that they can do overpowered nonsense. Which, for the record, I hate multi-classing. So bear with me if my bias for my bias coming out. But instead, it focuses now on more like that it's not required to take Pact of the Blade, but that you do stuff based on Hex. And like it gives you Hex, and it treats Hex in the same way that like Rangers treat Hunter's Mark. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, especially going with like the curse theming. You know, I don't know. I'm also not a person who is super upset about the sort of shift in tone. And I never cared. I never cared for Gish archetypes anyway. So, and for those who don't know, it's Gish is just a person who uses swords and spells, like somebody who gets up in a melee range and uses a sword but also does spell casting. So things like Blade Singers, Eldritch Knights, that sort of stuff. But big what Reanimator Artificer looks super cool. It looks really cool. So this is if you want to play as Dr. Frankenstein, where you are like stitching together constructs and undead and things like that, and doing all sorts of weird necromantic stuff through the power of science. Notably, one of their level 3 abilities is you can. So you get Spare the Dying, and this is you can use Spare the Dying at range. You can infuse the spell with electricity to jolt somebody back to life. So when you use Spare the Dying, normally it just stabilizes a creature. If you use this feature, it restores them to 1 hit point, and then also shocks any enemies that are around them. Very cool ability. And it's another pet subclass. So this time you get a little stitched together companion that has customizable features. So yeah, very cool. Hollow Warden, it struck me as very similar to sort of the like winter based subclass that we saw before, of just like instilling dread and fear in your enemies. But this time, so again, focuses on Hunter's Mark. So this is another very Hunter's Mark focused subclass, where you get more rider benefits to having Hunter's Mark on the target, which upsets folks, but I don't think there's any pleasing people with the Ranger. So, I'm in the camp where I would have rather have seen Hunter's Mark just become a class feature instead of keeping it as a spell. But I don't know if that would have changed up the design space too much. But all in all, it seems like a fine subclass. you just have to commit to using Hunter's Mark. Um, and it's a very tanky subclass, which is nice. You don't see that. Like, Rangers could fulfill that role, but a lot of the subclasses sort of push them more into like the ranged combatant type of build. So this is one where like you want to sort of get up close and personal. So yeah, that's out now. You can find that on the D&D Beyond website. Also, the pre-orders are live for Eberron, Forge of the Artificer, which is coming out in August, which features a bunch of Artificer stuff and Eberron centered things. It's only $20 on D&D Beyond, which leads me to believe that it's a smaller book. So just pointing that out there for people that are getting their hopes up of a nice big thick Eberron book. I would say if you're looking for that stuff, pick up Eberron Rising from the Last War, which is the 2014 Eberron book, or 2014 D&D Eberron book. But also, like, if you're looking for stuff to flesh out Eberron, check out all the stuff by Keith Baker on DM's Guild. So yeah, this is, I would consider this more to be just like a player's option book. There is some stuff on like running adventures, and maybe some adventures in there, but like, I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of meat to it for DMs. I think it's more for like a couple the smattering of player options, including like all the artificer stuff. So, but for the horror subclasses, I wonder if this means that we're going to see some sort of either like another Ravenloft reprint, or something along those lines. So yeah. So yeah, and again, the Eberron book comes out in August, mid-August. And the playtest feedback form for the horror subclasses goes up next week, which in my mind, like, there's never enough time to actually test these things. Like, it feels like you have to, like, it drops and you have to decide, like, oh, I'm going to get a group together like this weekend, and we're just going to make these subclasses and we're going to do a one shot. And it's like, I don't have the schedule to allow for that. So like, I'm not actually able to do any like actual play testing. All I'm doing is like looking at it and trying to, do some like paper math and stuff and like see how it looks on paper. And hopefully that matches up with how it actually plays, but like sometimes that's not the case. So, next up, Nintendo Life reports that Gex, do y'all remember Gex? is returning to consoles with several bundles available from limited run games. So the Gex trilogy includes Gex, Gex 2, and Gex 3. As a standard edition for $40. And this will be a physical release starting June 16th. There's a collector's box for $75, which includes, I believe that's one that includes art by, oh geez, I didn't write the name down, but it's one of the Final Fantasy artists. And a Tale Time edition, which is $200, which includes like all like pins and it's got a 3-foot tall inflatable Gex. It's weird. But yeah, so June 16th, coming to consoles. So, yeah, I remember I had one of the Gex games on N64, I think it was N64. It was all right. It's a collectathon. It's a product of its time. But these apparently, so they are remasters. They have quality of life adjustments and updated visuals. So we'll see how they look. Next up, Kotaku. Normally, I don't like to pull news articles from Kotaku, but sometimes they pick up something that doesn't really show up on anyone else's feeds. That they report that Team 4, which is the Overwatch 2 team at Blizzard, has fully unionized, making them the second wall-to-wall union at Blizzard Entertainment. The union is part of the Communication Workers of America, a sort of parent union. And one of the major reasons for this push was cited as all of the layoffs that occurred at Microsoft last year. So being a wall-to-wall union means that it's like it spans across departments. So it's not just like people in one specific job role, which is what you sometimes see. This is instead like it includes programmers, QA testers, artists, all that stuff. So, yeah, I would say this is a big win. And I'm wondering if we'll start to see the other teams. So if it's like 2 teams now at Blizzard, if we start to see this push happen with the other teams. Congratulate. I don't know if they have come up with a name for their union yet. The next step is to enter negotiations for contracts with management. And there have been some allegations that Microsoft has been dragging their feet on this with 2 other unions, like one from Bethesda. I don't remember where the other one was, but that like those negotiations are still ongoing, and it just seems like it's not happening in a timely manner. So yeah, here's hoping that they're able to get stuff negotiated, and that everything goes well for them. So congratulations. Next up, IGN reports that Pocket Pair, makers of Palworld, have patched out several gameplay functions that were named in the ongoing lawsuit filed by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. So notably, players no longer to summon your pals. You will no longer throw pal spheres. Instead, they just spawn right in front of you. And you will no longer be able to glide around on your pals. You will need a specific glider item. So, yeah, this is there's still so much rhetoric around this. But come to find out that Pocket Pair was disingenuous in stating like when the patents were filed in their PR message, and stating like that these patents were filed after the game came out, which is not true. They were in fact filed before. They were just updated after the game came out. But that's like a normal process. I guess it has come out that like the allegations that they were using both AI or generative AI and also Pokemon assets were found to be not true, or at least not likely to be true. That said, I mean, they really did this to themselves. So for folks who are watching on video, you can clearly see from the graphic here, but for folks who are listening on audio, so the thumbnail that I have to showcase this really kind of hits home the idea that like their pals look like Pokemon. So like if like, it's not the case that they directly lifted Pokemon assets, but they are very clearly mimicking the art style. And based on what I've seen from the game and what I've heard from the game, is I don't know if it rises to meet in the United States, at least. I can't speak for other countries. If it meets the criteria to be considered satire and parody, instead of just, well, we're going to make a monster capturing base building survival game, and use the same art style. And I really think I still maintain that had they not been so antagonistic in their initial sort of marketing for the game, is I don't think this would have gotten to where it is, in terms of like the lawsuit being filed and everything. It seems like making characters that very clearly use the Pokemon art style and and the sort of art direction, but then put them in situation like on the graphic here. There's one of the pals wielding a minigun, and that's like not something that you would see in Pokemon. But had that not been in there, like had the guns not been in there, and had there not been the big, Pal World splash graphic, like it would be easy to assume that this is Pokemon. So, again, I really feel like that and this has also kind of been Pocket Pair's MO, is to kind of just very closely mimic other games, and just churn them out. And it seems like they just finally got lucky with something that actually caught on and got popular. So we'll see. Yeah, it sounds like they're patching this out in an effort to satisfy the demands of the lawsuit without having to pull their game from stores. So, yeah, I will find out, if these patches are enough to satisfy. And as a reminder, this lawsuit is being filed is in Japan, so it follows Japanese IP laws. However, U.S. IP law feels about it is not relevant, because that's not where the lawsuit's filed. So, yeah. So we'll have to see. I don't think this is going to go well for Pocket Pair. So, yeah. We'll have to wait and see. Finally, our last bit of news topic. So Polygon, again, Polygon's going to be another one that I'm going to try and limit the articles that I get from it, because like I already don't like picking up stuff from Game Rant, or Games Radar. Games Radar just seemed to have kind of dropped off for me, and just is like churning stuff out. But they report that Defender, GoldenEye 007, Quake, and Tamagotchi have been inducted into the World Video Game Hall of Fame. This is sort of an ongoing exhibit that's part of the Strong Museum of Play. Nominees are judged for their inclusion on 4 metrics, which is icon status, longevity, geographical reach, and influence. Each of these were selected, so the rationale for them Defender was picked as sort of one of the first games to really delineate between sort of casual gaming and hardcore gaming. And that's why a very classic like Atari title. GoldenEye 007 was sort of the still first big console first person shooter. And it's still very iconic and very, robust multiplayer mode. Quake, of course, for multiplayer gaming and just the wide breadth it had on PC. And also for modding, since there was quite a few mods available for it. And Tamagotchi for kind of defining a genre, and sort of introducing the idea of like because we already had portable gaming with like the Game Boy and Game Gear and stuff like that, but like a small tiny device to carry with you, that incorporates those features, that incorporates the gameplay into it. So, yeah, congratulations to those 4 games. I certainly think they're all very worthy inclusions into this. I will say, not a fan of the name of the exhibit. I would like call it international or something, because like World Video Game Hall of Fame. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well for me. But so that is going to wrap things up for this week. Thank you all for joining me. If you would like to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, be sure to check out 8bitadventures.com. If you'd like to help support that content, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/8bitadventures. I would like to thank all of my current patrons for your continued support. Opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. And with that, we're done for this week. So, as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.